Hello, good evening to you. So this past week we've seen the near collapse of a national inquiry into Pakistani rape gangs who targeted white British children. Labour kicked out a small boat migrant back to France, but he somehow managed to sneak back into the UK. Another boat migrant who sexually assaulted a child near his asylum hotel was released from custody when he was meant to be deported. No one knows where he is, he's literally just gone. And earlier this month a bloke called Jihadi, he was called Jihadi, who came here from Syria, murdered 2 people at a synagogue. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer's just given £10 million to protect Muslim communities in the UK. Does this sound like the kind of Britain you loved and enjoyed as a child? Because tonight a manhunt is underway in Britain as police search for that convicted sex offender who's on the run. The illegal migrant, Hadashu Kebatu, who assaulted a 14-year-old girl, was again, quote-unquote, accidentally released from a British prison when he should have been deported. Let's be absolutely clear, this isn't a clerical error. The state literally opens the gates and let him walk free instead of bunging him into the back of a van and deporting him. The government says it's appalled. David Lammy you just saw there on the airwaves. But what good is outrage after the fact? Tell that to the families in Essex, watching a manhunt unfold for someone who should have never been on the streets in the first place. Tell that to those in the courtroom who heard how he had 2 teenagers in front of him who he told he wanted to have a baby with. And tonight it gets worse too. In Walsall, another asylum seeker called Deng Chol, there he is on your screens, Deng Chol Majek, has been found guilty of murdering a 27-year-old hotel worker, Rhiannon Sky White. She was a mother. He stabbed her more than 20 times after following her from the asylum hotel where he lived, with a screwdriver, dare I say, in the head, so viciously one of those strikes pierced her brain. These aren't isolated incidents. Take, for example, Yaqub Ahmed, the Somali rape gang rapist who dodged deportation for 5 years before finally being sent back to Somalia. There he is on your screen now. Or even Lerako Chidamo, who murdered head teacher Philip Lawrence, but couldn't be removed from Britain because of EU law. Case after case, each one presented as an exception. But together they paint a grim picture, don't they? A system that fails at the most basic of duty to keep the public safe. And America knows this story too. In New York, migrants released from custody later attacked police officers in Times Square. There's the footage on your TV now. In California, officials admitted dangerous offenders weren't handed over to immigration authorities and re-offended before ICE, the Immigration Enforcement Agency, could act. And what about one of the most notorious cases of all, the appalling murder of Laken Riley? There she is on your screen. A nursing student murdered by an illegal alien who had intended to rape her. He shouldn't have been in the country. So, different country in America, but same outcome, right? Violent offenders slip through the cracks, governments blaming rare errors, while families are left grieving. And tonight, Nigel Farage blasts it as an example of broken Britain, while Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch hit out at an entire system collapsing. This was the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy just a few moments ago.
Well, I'm appalled and livid on behalf of the public that Kebatu is at large. He should be deported back to Ethiopia after the sexual assaults that he's committed. And of course, there is now a manhunt with Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and British Transport Police looking for him. We know that he boarded a train and is at large in London. And of course I've asked for a full investigation into what's happened, and an officer has been suspended.
Well, like I said, you can rest easy tonight, Britain. You can go to sleep with a bit of peace on your mind because David Lammy's on the case. Anyway.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade, and in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney? Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Let's get the take of former Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville, who joins me live now from the UK. Mike, thank you for your company. Sorry it's under these circumstances. This incident today is just a latest example in a litany of complete joke of a country we've descended into. Can I get your thoughts, please, on this manhunt tonight? Are we going to find him? Will the cops, will MI5 be involved? Just enlighten us, please, will you?
Yeah, firstly, it is a complete fiasco, isn't it? And it just sums up what's wrong with this country. The first duty of the state, as you said, is to keep us safe, and it's utterly failing. Now, what they must be doing now, I imagine, we know that he got on that 12:41 train, and so that arrives into London at about 1:15, so they'll have some good CCTV. They'll know where he got off. Liverpool Street is in this, you've got BTP there, British Transport Police, and then he would have left into the City Police area. So there's all manner of good CCTV and facial recognition systems deployed in the city itself, and then they'll be working with the Met to check the CCTV. But this is a painstaking business, because you're looking at not just the council CCTV or police CCTV. You're looking for shops and Ring doorbells, and these things take time. I've no doubts if they can use the security services, they will. But the main focus of this will be the CCTV to try and track him as to where he's gone.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to bring my panel in DC now into the conversation, if you don't mind. I'm joined by the Washington correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, Connor Stringer, and the political analyst, Eric Cam. Good evening, chaps. Thanks for your company. Connor, you first as the... are you a Brit? Are you Northern Irish or Irish?
Northern Irish.
Oh, OK, you are a Brit. Right. Mike Neville's here. Do you have anything to ask Mike on this manhunt?
Mike, I'm quite interested to see, and with your knowledge, as to how difficult an operation this is. I mean, London is huge. This is not exactly the small square print of Epping to search for. That's a lot of CCTV. That's a lot of man hours. How difficult is an operation of this scale?
It's absolutely massive, because as I've said, you'll need all sorts of specialist officers. I set up specialist teams in the Met which deal with CCTV, but it's the actual gathering of it. What they can only hope that's happened is he's come out of the railway station, they've got him on CCTV. If he's got on a bus or something like that, again, the buses have all got CCTV, but it's the extraction of the data and somebody going through it. You've got facial recognition systems. I had a specialist team called the super recognisers, the human super recognisers. They're the ones who found the Novichok men in Salisbury. It wasn't machines, it was humans. But that's thousands of hours of CCTV. And as you say, London is an enormous place. This is several haystacks and one needle to get into it.
Eric, can I ask you, I suggested there in the introduction at the top of the show that illegal migration, particularly when it's undocumented as it is, at the scale that it is, literally we're letting 50,000 come into England over the past, well, since Labour took power in July last year. 50,000 random, mostly strange men, we don't know who they are, where they're from. I argue this threatens to bring down not just Great Britain, but the West as well.
It's a problem that here in the United States we're grappling with as well. In fact, just recently in Southern California, there was an Indian man who somehow was able to get a license to drive 18-wheeler trucks and actually killed 3 people. It turns out he was drunk driving. And this is the second time such an incident has happened. We saw it also happen in Florida, where, again, undocumented illegal immigrant in this country somehow was able to get a license to drive these trucks, and it led to disastrous consequences. And this is something that right now federal officials are grappling with. How are people actually coming into the country illegally, but then somehow getting behind the wheel of these massive, massive vehicles, and we're seeing the toll of death and destruction that they're leaving in their wake. And it's something that, you're right, it is going to, I think, continue to be a problem unless or until officials get a handle.
And do you know what irks me, guys, all of you, and viewers at home, listeners at home? What irks me is you go to these, I've been to plenty, the Epping Hotel protest before, the Barbican in London, and you have the counter-protesters influencers who are calling you racist. They're saying stand up to racism, refugees welcome. You know, there's nothing wrong with illegal migrants. Time after time after time, we have examples where people from different cultures, different behaviours, they don't know how to conduct themselves, quite frankly, in Western civilizations. They go on to commit sexual assaults, they go on to rape, they go on to kill. In the case of poor Rhiannon Sky White, the young mother who had a screwdriver smashed into her skull more than 20 times. You've got the guy here who committed the assault outside the Epping Hotel, now on the run. Connor, I just can't understand the concept of thinking from these people who go to these protests, the counter-protesters, the stand up to racism lot, the commies, who say, you are racist for raising concerns about what's going on in Britain, when it's all laid out in front of them.
Well, that's it, and I think the tide has shifted on those individuals who surely do not feel safe on the streets in their own homes to have individuals like this, sexual predators targeting 14-year-old children on their streets. Could be their daughter, could be one of ours, one of our family, friends, anything like this. And I think now what we're faced with is Britain is fed up and the tide is changing. People have realised now actually you can have a voice and it's right to point out that you feel unsafe in your country because immigration has gotten out of control. You don't recognise your neighbour, you don't recognise the culture that is taking over your streets. And the tide is changing, Ben, and we're seeing that with the protests in Epping and the reaction from tonight's story.
Yeah, we're told we're not allowed to talk about it. Talk about it, you're a racist, you're far right, you're some sort of, bigot. Mike, I just want to get you to react to this clip, this comment from Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, who's been speaking in the past couple of moments. Let's take a look, then I've got your thoughts, Mike.
We certainly need a public inquiry into how this dangerous illegal immigrant, who is also a child sex offender, got released. We also need an urgent apology from Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and Justice Secretary David Lammy, who have presided over this fiasco. It is an absolute disgrace that this incompetent Labour government has allowed this dangerous man out onto our streets, and this evening he is posing a risk to children around Essex.
Mike, do you reckon this is a Labour problem, or is it a prison service problem? Is it, a Home Office problem, transferring the guy for deportation? Where does the buck stop?
Well, somebody made the decision to let him go, and that's it. But I think that Chris Philp and the Tories have got a cheek. They presided 14 years over this. We had the dangerous Iranian spy escaping from Wandsworth prison during their time. So I think both of the main parties, I think the public are sick and tired of them because we see this time and time again, and we've been told, haven't we, to close our eyes and shut our mouths. And I think the greatest statistic I've got on, what immigration can do to crime is that in 1951 in London there was 214 robberies reported in the entire year. The population's grown slightly. It was 8 million then, it's 9 million now. There are no 214 robberies every day in London. That's how much crime has changed, and we've got to look at that. Those stats are from the Spectator magazine. So the impact of mass immigration, particularly bringing people from violent countries, places where fraud is completely acceptable, where bribery and corruption is completely acceptable, this is going to impact on our country. And I really feel I had to speak to my two young daughters who live in Bournemouth, sort of what should be an idyllic English place, about strange men and what they can do. I think it's starting to impact on the public all over the country. At one time it was just inner cities who had this problem. Now it's everywhere, like we saw in Epping, and it's a massive problem.
Yeah, well, talking of Bournemouth, there was I can't remember the poor girl's name. A girl was murdered by an asylum seeker on the beach in Bournemouth, just in broad daylight, just insane. And I dread to think about the number of cases that go unreported by the media. There's no local newspapers really anymore. There's no local court reporters. How many go uncovered? I'm sure there are dozens and dozens. Mike, thanks very much for your company tonight.